Okay. Okay, Tina, do you want to say a little bit about the little Froebel Partnership logo in the corner?
Oh, shall I? Yes, yes. I think it's such a lovely idea. The Guildford team that Chris mentioned, um, um, Sally Cave was head and is leading the practice there. Froebel's favourite flower was the lily, and so they chose as their logo a water lily, because lilies tend to grow in rather dark places. And Froebel felt that it was important that we find children who are in dark places, and then we can help them to flourish and grow into beautiful flowers. Thank you, Chris.
It's a nice symbolisation for us flourishing and all of us growing into beautiful flowers, as we all are. So I'm going to move swiftly into what we're hoping will form the programme for this evening, and to say how this session is going to work. So I'm going to kind of kick off with some sharing with you, as I said, this project and this work Tina and I have been involved with our wonderful colleagues. Was really based around, funded by the Froebel Trust, and based around Froebelian ideas, philosophy and principles. And at the heart of that, Froebel also talked about reflective practice, which means that you are, or what I call praxis, where you have to think to act, and you have to act. The acting helps you think and the thinking helps you act. So it's the act of reflecting on practice and then engaging in practice with thoughtful intent to it. And really what we're sharing with you tonight is a reflective tool that we developed with our wonderful colleague of practitioner educators in New Zealand and in Guildford, and wider as we tried it out amongst our team. And to really give you the message as educators out there, you need to find time to think. We're all great doers. We kind of roll up our sleeves and get on with it. But it's really important, if you're going to be to be rigorous and to be effective in your practice, not just to act, but to think about the actions, thinking, reflecting for action, reflecting in action, and reflecting on action after. That's a Donald Shon, who is one of the founding fathers of reflective practice. But Froebel was there first a long time ago. So we're giving you this evening a reflective tool to use yourself about your own practice, but also to use as a team of practitioners together, to have a look together at what you're doing and what the children are doing, and to give you a framework to kind of think about that practice. So I'm going to share with you some brilliant ideas that will help set that up. And then I'm going to talk to you and give you 12 good reasons why we think play matters, why play is so central to young children's lives, young children's ability to flourish and thrive and learn and develop, and how without it they live impoverished childhoods, and will go on to live impoverished lives if they haven't had those early experiences. And I think as a group of educators, and with this, we've learned that we need to play as adult educators as well. We need to play with ideas, play with each other, because play enables deep cognitive and reflective processes to go on. So I want to talk a little bit about why we've called this the power of play and the pleasures of play, and why that's really important, not to lose sight of that in the rush to harry and hurry children through a set of narrow so-called academic goals, that this split of children's academic work and play, which is such a false dichotomy. And then I'm going to hand over to Tina, who's going to give some rigor about what do we mean by play? What is play? How do we see play? What do we understand by play? How is it operating in our settings? How do you know, and how can you recognise and deconstruct and think about your children's play? And then we're going to invite you to engage in some analysis of some children in play, using our reflective layers of play framework that we've developed. So to help you kind of think about what kind of play you're seeing, and talk with each other Claire, you're going to organise everybody into small breakout rooms where we're going to be with a small group of colleagues where you'll all have the chance to have a reflective dialogue together about, we're going to show you some video footage of children playing, and then you can have a reflective dialogue using some of the reflection prompts with us. And then we're going to have 2 rounds of that reflective dialogue process. And then we're going to come back together at the end and kind of put it all together, we hope, and send you off with some ideas of where do you go with what you've come along tonight to learn about. What do you do with this? Because we're really keen that tonight's session is the beginning of something for you, that you're going to kind of go away and take what you've learned tonight into your own practice and become with your team reflective educators about children's play and strong advocates for play in that. Okay, so this is the kind of heritage. Onto the next slide, Sue, please.
Chris, just before I go on to the next slide, your camera's gone off in that little technical hitch. Is there any chance you can push it on again? Because we can just see CP. Yeah.
Oh, it says it's on.
Well, never mind. It's right. There you are. That's better.
Am I back again?
You are. Okay. It's much nicer to see your face, Chris. I'll now move the slide on.
Okay.
There you are.
Thank you. So I talked earlier about partnership working, and what we're encouraging you to do after tonight is to get into reflective partnership, colleagues in dialogues together, so that you work together for transformation. And by that I mean learning and development for us is a transformative process. Children transform. Learning and development is a hugely transformative process, both for children and educators, and we're all working together to make sure that in our daily experiences and daily lives, whether we're an adult or a child, grow us, develop us, help us thrive, help us become something that we weren't yesterday, that we've moved into a kind of greater sense of capacity and empowerment and confidence in who we are. So we always wanted on this project to work in what we call, and Wenger calls, a community of practice, community being the operative word, that we were connected together. That's a Froebelian philosophy, by the way. See, Tina, how I'm weaving it in?
Yes, it's beautiful.
Everything connects, and that you're working together in unity together for transformation to enhance children's lives and your lives as a group of educators. We called ourselves the Froebel Partnership because we were guided by Froebel and we were working together in this community in practice. And it's not a kind of one-off event. We worked together collegially for 3 years intensively on this project, and it's still carrying on post this project because we love each other and have got into such a strong professional relationship. We can't stop the dialogue with each other. So we developed this sustained and inclusive community of practice from the educators, all the educators in both the New Zealand setting and the Guildford setting engaged with us on an equal and democratic basis. They all had a voice. We all listened to each other. They all shaped what we're sharing with you tonight. And it's really important that Tina and I acknowledge that their voices are in our voices, because we couldn't have done any of this without them.
Absolutely.
But we engaged over an extended period of time, and that's an important thing, is that you need to build it in regularly into your weekly, monthly, daily. It's not a luxury, this. It's at the heart of effective practice. So we engaged in shared reflective pedagogic processes together, where we were confident to share what we were doing with the children, what we saw the children doing, and engage in dialogue with each other about analysing it and picking it apart and understanding what those wonderful children and educators were doing together, what they were creating together, and how it worked. Here's some of the key Froebelian principles that it's important. These were our guiding principles, but I think they're a set of excellent principles when you're trying to create this kind of community. So we had quite a lot of freedom in that. There was no one way or one right topic or one right thing to say. We had a lot of freedom of expression, and what we wanted to look at was very much determined by us. But we were guided by Froebelian principles, which are there. We were guided by that shared mission to make children's lives better. we were guided by a shared mission to develop our practice, to understand our practice better. And we quite like the notion of freedom with guidance. I think it's a good logo for thinking about what you want to create for your children. Don't you want to give them freedom in your context, but with you as and the provision and each other as kind of guiding, benevolent guiders. And I was listening to a Desert Island, Tim Berners-Lee, the creator of the internet, and he said he'd grown up in a household where his mother had, I think he used the phrase, watchful neglect. And which is a kind of freedom with guidance, I think. Watchful neglect. They were given a lot. He was given a lot of freedom, but somebody was watching over him and guiding him to do that. And I hope that that's something that resonates with us in our team. We had a lot of freedom and autonomy at all of us, but we were guided by what we were collectively trying to do. The second thing that is a really strong Froebelian principle, and you'll see it in our work, is we were just coming out of COVID when we started this project, and a lot of what we were doing at that time was outside, and Froebel really talks to us a lot about the deep importance of engaging with nature. And when we're looking at play, it's very interesting what outdoor or natural world play is like compared to indoor and manufactured goods and materials rather than natural materials. So Froebel is very keen for us to encourage the children to engage with nature. He has this concept of unity, connectedness, and community, which I've talked quite a lot about. But that sense of I call it we-ness, us together, not me and you and I and me. It's about us collectively, and I like the idea of we-ness. The connectiveness of our community and doing things together. I'm sure, Tina, you're going to talk about creativity and the power of symbols in children's play, and how in play there's a lot of creativity and symbolization through the kind of way play evolves and the materials that are there. He flagged, and Froebel was one of the first educators and philosophers who said that those who worked with children, the educators, should be knowledgeable and nurturing. And I like that blend. They need to be professionally informed, evidence-based, but have that kind of nurturing notion in them, that there is what Jules Page calls professional love, if you like, but looking at the whole child and nurturing the child's well-being as well as their kind of cognitive development. Here it is again, learning through self-activity and reflection on that. So not having something done to you. Tina, I know you're going to talk a lot about first-hand experience. That's self-activity as well. And reflecting on that and giving children time to reflect on that. And there it is in Flamingo, pink, the central importance of play. And Froebel was there a long, long time ago. So that importance of working together, you'll never get excellent practice if you don't work in partnership and engage in these deep reflective dialogues and have the sense of your leadership responsibility or guiding responsibility for what happens in your setting. Next slide, please, Sue. So we developed a framework for reflection out of one of the things that came out of it is this, what we're calling reflection with guidance. Do you see the take on Froebel's freedom with guidance? This is reflection with guidance. And what we're going to share with you tonight is some guiding questions or prompts for your reflection and your dialogue to have. And not educate people to do as they're told. Our lens, our Froebelian reflection with guidance isn't to tell you what to do. It's to give you the confidence to be free with your thoughts and take action for yourselves. We're not being didactic about what you should or shouldn't do. We want you to be informed and rigorous yourselves and know what you're seeing happening and be free and confident to take action for yourselves. So we're giving you tonight the reflection with guidance framework, which is a way to analyse and evaluate your observations of children and your practice so that children flourish. We can't share all of it tonight. We developed 4 reflective lenses, if we called them, 4 kind of aspects or dimensions of practice for you to think about when you look and observe what children are doing. There are 4 of them. We're going to focus particularly on lens 3, the network for development of learning, which is where play is located in our framework. But there's what the first lens we looked at, that the place and space where the learning happens, and the physical environment, indoors and out, the time of the day, the time in terms of seasons, how much time you have, how time unfolds, how you use time in the sessions that you have. So that's one lens that I'm afraid we haven't got time, but we might pick it up in our discussions. The second lens, when you look at a piece of practice, is who's in it. Who's there? Who are the actors? And what are they doing? What are their actions? What are the educators doing? What are the children doing? And what's their relationships like? And their relatedness. And by that, there'll be a relatedness with the context, the physical environment as well. Because remember Froebel, everything links, everything connects. Networks for development and learning is where we're putting in play. We're doing some intense work on that in a minute. And the fourth lens, Sue, you led on this with Tony, I know, we called transformations, but it was the impact. What difference did that episode make to the children or the educators' lives? What happened as a result of it? What was transformed through that bit? If we're educators, we want something to happen when children and our educators have experience together. We could call them outcomes, we could call it impact, but we like the notion of transformations because it's about changing the shape of something, transmorphing something shifted as a result, and really thinking hard about what was it that happened. So what happened as a result of that? And that's another really interesting lens to look at a piece of practice. And each of those four lenses, if you want to use this guidance to frame your dialogues, and I'll show you how to get hold of the four lenses at the end of the talk. Each set has a set of reflective lenses to guide your reflections. The reflection with guidance, there are four lenses and a set of reflective prompts with each of those lenses. Okay, my final bit of input, and I think we're doing okay for time, I hope. Next slide, Sue, is I want to talk to you about evidence, what we know about the power and the pleasures of play. And I've got 12 reasons why this is important, why it's important that you come tonight, why it's important you leave here really thinking hard about how you use play in your practice. And the first one at the top is something people who know me know I really care about human rights and democracy and civic work, the civic work we do to give children the sense, and you as educators, the sense that you have a voice in what goes on. And in play, children and educators are free to express their agency, to be in control, to evolve it in a way that they have responsibility for, but also leadership on. And we've signed up the UN Convention on the Rights of Child that actually says, England signed this up, that says that children have the right to play. And yet we know in our country, children's right to play at home and in settings is being stripped away, and there's much less time. So we've got to really fight for their right to play and to have the power and the pleasure of those playful experiences. So it's a right that's there, and it's important to remind ourselves of that. There's some wonderful theoretical background. Tina, you'd want me to mention Piaget too, I think, but also yes. Vygotsky, who made us really think about cognitively what does play do. And Vygotsky talks about the ZPD, the zone of proximal development, which is when cognitive shift happens, when children do something, something's transformed for them in terms of their understanding of the world and the way they can think. And he says the highest order thinking happens through experiencing play. So people who've never experienced play will find it hard to experience that higher order thinking. It's a really important part of developing children's imagination and their higher order thinking capacity, which obviously is what we're trying to do in education, isn't it? This next rationale is very Froebelian, and he talks about through play, we all have an inner life and an inner kind of spiritual, but inner reality that is ours and inside ourselves. And it's through play that children express their inner life. So the inner world becomes part of the outer world, which is deeply satisfying and healthy, because we know if we just bottle things up, emotions or experiences inside, it becomes a bit like unexploded bomb inside of ourselves. So through play, children can express and enable their inner world to become part of their outer world. Tina, do chip in if you want to add things here. But I think that's quite a powerful thing in terms of emotional health to think about. And you know, we know it has, because of those things, it has a central part in human development and learning. And if we don't give children these experiences, we're robbing them or impoverishing their development and their learning experiences. It's a means by which, and again, very Froebelian, learning and aspects, elements of learning and development are coordinated and linked together and integrated together and deepened through that capacity to explore in a multi-dimensional way and an imaginative way their experiences, so that they can deepen and broaden and bring things together collectively. So it's a fusion and a way to integrate learning, which means it's worthwhile. When I say ensures educational worthwhile, because it will make a difference. So it's a very valuable and effective means by which we enable children to develop and learn. I'm coming back to the emotional and the thriving and the flourishing bit and the well-being bit. Through play, it helps children deal with trauma, setbacks, tragedies, leading to greater resilience. And we know that they enact, and that inner becomes outer. It's part of that, leading to more resilience in young children because they push themselves. Vygotsky says they always in their play, that's it, they feel free to push themselves further than they would in a real situation, if you like, or another situation. They kind of test themselves out, and in that way it improves mental health and well-being. There's a cultural, I'm coming back to the civic work here.
Yeah, Chris, could I just chip in there?
Please
because
do. Yeah,
I think what you're saying is so important, that play helps children to deal with setbacks. And so this is why I don't use the word playful, because that only deals with one side of play. And it's very easy, you find, for politicians to then dismiss play as important in the way that, Chris, you're outlining it is. And so I've started to talk about children needing to be play full, FULL, because then you get the whole of play and you get that resilience that it builds up through children dealing sometimes with trauma and tragedies in their play. And yes, it improves the mental health and the well-being. It also sets them up for being at their intellectual best. So I just hope so. I just thought I'd just pop that in, because what you're saying is so important.
Yeah, and also I remember you saying, Tina, that when you say something's playful, it kind of trivializes it a bit, or it's more easily dismissed. When you say something's full of play, it's full of power and full of pleasure and full of expression and that deep inner growth and development of prowess and mastery for that child to kind of feel.
Yes.
So, which brings me on to this, and it's through games and playful situations that children understand how the world works or doesn't work, and they play around with that and learn what's possible and what's not possible. So they understand cultural conventions and relational conventions as well, and how routines occur. Mastering technical prowess, we know that they try things out in their play that they nearly can do but not quite do, or they play that they can be what they're not yet, or what they might not be, but they play with kind of possibilities rather than fixed realities of where they are now. And isn't that important, that that creativity bit? For me, creativity is, or entrepreneurship, is imagining something that's not real, that's not there, that might be possible but isn't there yet. And that is where you get the innovators, the original thinkers, the creative thinkers. Because to be creative or an innovator or original, you've got to be able to, or Ferralavas calls it an entrepreneur, you've got to be able to imagine something that isn't there in reality. something that might be there or might be possible there. And play is fantastic for that, particularly imaginative play. So I hope I've given you 12 good reasons to kind of bring play back into the centrality of your practice and really look intensively and deeply at the play that's going on in your settings. And now I'm going to hand over to Tina, who's going to give you a framework to guide your thinking and understanding of what we mean by play. But just by coincidence, I had 12 good reasons and Tina's got 12 good features.
Yes.
So over to you, Tina,
Lovely,
to talk
thank
about the
you.
centrality of play.
Well, I have always kept revising these features in the light of new research that begins to beams out and helps us to take our thinking further. I first started finding these 12 features in the literature in 1991, and I think that what we have here is the sort of latest iteration of this. But you can see, I mean, Chris is right. First-hand experience, I am going to be focusing on hugely. And I think when you look at the bits of video, you'll feel the importance of those. It's almost as if the richer the first-hand experience, the richer the possibilities for play. So it's absolutely crucial for children to have that. As Chris has said, children are thinking about the culture that they're growing up in all the time. They're learning about the sort of social rules. They're probably also learning about rules in games. Games are where the rules are coming from the outside in. So, you know, things like singing games, skipping games, hopscotch, all those sorts of things. The rules are coming from the outside. But what you often find when children get to know each other, because they often like to play games with rules where they don't know each other very well, but as they get to know each other, then they start to make their own rules. And so the rules change and it becomes play. And I think that's absolutely fascinating and shows again the creativity of children. We're going to be thinking, I hope, a great deal about the way that children use symbols in their journey into play. And in a minute, I'm going to just take you through the different layers of play. But the important thing when you look at layers of play is that they are not ages and stages kind of looking at play. In layers of play, you can use a whole range of these layers of play all in the same week or all in the same session when the child is playing. So it's not a stable state. Play is constantly changing and moving as it needs to do. And that's why not having external pressure is so important, because it needs to have that freedom. And the kind of guidance that we can give is suddenly noticing that they need an extra wooden spoon in the play when they're making mud pies, and you can just help things along in the guidance. You don't even notice that the adults are helping. So there's no pressure. Because play is all about processes, that it doesn't have end products, and it's very intrinsically motivated. It's self-propelling. Chris has talked about how when children play, they enter imagined worlds. And sorry, it's my answer phone. I don't know what to do about that. I'll just talk over the top of it. They enter alternative and imaginative worlds. And we see them sometimes moving from very literal play that's terribly grounded in their first-hand experiences. And then they start to manipulate that and sort it out, rearrange it. And imagination is hugely about reimagining and rearranging what you already know. That's a very big part of that deeper levels of play as it expands and deepens. But we don't always stay at that level all the time, so we might go back into the literal. And then we see children are functioning in advance of what they can actually do. And I've always loved the idea of wallowing. You know, when you're really deeply in something, you're wallowing. It might be wallowing in an idea, it might be wallowing in feelings. We've talked about the joy, or it might be feeling sad and allowing that to be played out so that you can deal with your life. And also being very competent. You know, we see children running whole offices and shops and things in their play. So overall, play is an integrating mechanism. It's the way that we bring ourselves together. It makes us whole people. And that's another kind of connection that Chris talked about, the unity of learning. Here we're seeing the unity in the children's play. So it's a constantly changing state, but my goodness, it's such an important part of how we develop and learn. So should we look at the next slide, Sue? And now this is, you might not be a very gritty kind of person. I'm not always gritty, but you know, you might want to turn this into more of a sort of circle and stars and things coming off. You'll find your own way of dealing with this, but this just helps us to look at what the different layers are and the foundations of play. This is where children are first-hand experiencing the world and the people and the cultural context that they're growing up in, the spaces, the places, all the things that are in the other three lenses, which Chris talked about, lenses 1 and 2, and we transform into the fourth lens as the learning gets richer. So a lot of using the senses in this foundational play, and a lot of physical movements, children exploring, getting to know things. It's terribly important that children can do that. And the Guildford group and the group in New Zealand spent a lot of time looking at those aspects, because the foundations of play are crucial, because they're feeding into other aspects of play, and children also return to them because they are layering even those foundations in the play. And that's one of the things I've always found hugely helpful about Piaget, as Chris said. I've still got a fondness for him, even though we've found him not to be totally the answer. But he's very, very helpful, I think, when we're dealing with children with very young babies in their play, and he's very helpful with children when they're learning new languages. Perhaps English isn't their first language. He's very helpful for children with disabilities, where communication through verbal language can be very difficult. So foundations of play are important, and they never stop being important. Don't dismiss them as an early stage. We need them right the way through our lives. We're even learning, needing them today when we're trying to deal with the complexities of coming on a Teams project. You know, it never ends. I've been doing a lot of exploring today. Emerging imitative play. Now, we know, you know, children love to imitate people and what they're doing, and we see them behaving just like somebody else. They might want to be like mummy doing the cooking. They might like to be like daddy doing the cooking. They might like to be coming into the nursery and helping the staff to do cooking. You know, all sorts of things, little everyday activities, sometimes with people in their home context, sometimes in other contexts. They will be wanting to do things the way people in their cultural setting are doing things. They are, when they do this, beginning to learn how they can really use those first-hand experiences in their play. And we had wonderful examples in the observations that the staff in New Zealand and Guildford were making. You know, children rocking babies, pushing babies in prams, sitting babies in buggies, and then all the wonderful play. You're going to see a lovely little bit in a moment. playing out of doors, you know, the music they hear, the dancing they see people do, all kinds of things come into imitation as part of getting to know your cultural context and the people you're with. And it's very emotionally satisfying to do that. And then the next thing, and I don't know if it was the chat bit's just covering this over, but it's the heading here is developing literal pretend play. Play at certain moments needs to be very literal. It's very much about sort of real life scenes. We often call it role play. I was going to say being the postman, but I do still see the postman who comes to us actually. But things, you know, going into the supermarket, learning all about how you pay for things at the till, those kinds of things. They're very literal. You can see how they depend on the quality of the foundations of the play, or the kind of emerging possibilities to do things like other people in the play. So they're standing for something else. And children, we begin to see children actually, perhaps they don't exactly need a real phone. They might use a wooden block and pretend it's a phone, or they might be in the sandpit and pretend that they've made some porridge or some pasta. They might pretend to be a dog because they've seen a dog and they want to pretend to be like that. They might even pretend to be a character from a story that they know, but it's quite literal. It's very linked to their first-hand experiences. And then there's another level. Now, this is the level which probably with the children you're working with in the first 5, 6 years, where we really begin to see the deepening imaginative play burgeoning. That is not to say that it doesn't occur with younger children at all, but this is when it should take off. And where children will be returning to literal play a lot of the time, because it's almost as if they're doing things for real in that kind of play, but then they're going to start rearranging things, transforming them into how they think they possibly might be. So it won't necessarily be like real life. And they'll be going beyond experiences that they have had. They might pretend to be a burglar. Perhaps, you know, there's been a burglary and they've heard it talked about. They know about taking things that don't belong to you. They start to embroider that experience and take it beyond exactly what they have first-hand experienced into a rearrangement of first-hand experiences. They might be making spells. They might be making mixtures of all sorts of things. And there's an awful lot of supposing this, what if that? Is this a possibility? So it's very, very creative. And I have to say that I've been quite worried looking at the play in some contexts. I think that we are at a moment where we've really got to safeguard the play, because we're losing some layers in the play, and that is very serious, because the play should be flowing, and at the end of a play session it does fade at the end of that episode, the play episode, and it can never exactly be recreated again. I don't know if you can remember that from your own childhood, but you have a wonderful time playing something and then it doesn't quite go the same way when you reenact and try and do things again the next day, because it's something which belongs to a particular time, a particular moment in space. But it does matter And if you haven't experienced all 4 of those layers across the range, using whichever bit you need at particular times, you're not going to be as well equipped for the next part of your life. So now, if we just have a little think then about how we're going to move into a little look with some reflective questions as you have a little look at a bit of video that we'd like to share with you. It's a bit of video from Guildford. One of the things that would be so lovely would be to get some exchange visits between some of you in Birmingham and Guildford, because that would set up some wonderful conversations, I think. When you look at this bit of video, see if you can see some of those layers that I've talked about, and maybe the way, there's a bit of toing and froing across the layers. What are the children learning through the first-hand experiences that they've had? Can you see feelings, emotions? Emotions can be raw, or are they thoughtful feelings? I very much like Tomasio, a neuroscientist's work on this. Raw emotion can be so upsetting that a child can't play, but are you seeing the kind of emotions which lead to thoughtful feelings? What's the adult role here? How is the adult observing, supporting, extending what the children are doing? And are those children being given some time and some space to wallow, to concentrate, be involved? Think of flowers and the involvement scale here. Autonomy as they focus their attention. And thinking of lens 4, transformative outcomes that this play could lead to. So hold on to some of those thoughts and let's have a look at a bit of video.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Next question.
Lovely. Well, look, that's lovely. I hope you all had a good discussion. We thought we'd just look at this gorgeous little boy. I mean, one of the things I love about play is that it doesn't have to cost any money. We can not have to be anxious about providing expensive equipment. And I think this gives us an indication of how all 4 of the lenses in the Reflections with Guidance come together. They all of them need each other. And that really struck me very much when we were looking at that bit of video, because, so much depends on how the adult is observing what children are doing and then supporting it and extending it. I also rather loved the way that little boy on the edge was observing, supporting and extending, because this so often happened when I was involved in a block play project back in the 1990s. We had a Froebel block play project. We worked with 5 nursery schools, and it was so interesting because we so often saw a child that wasn't actually in the play. They weren't being kept out of it, but he was being actually quite respectful of that little boy playing. And at the point where the little boy needed, he was a bit worried. He wasn't worried, but in the play, he went from one kind of layer of the play to another, and then back into another layer again. That little boy went and just made sure the equipment was how he thought the little boy would like it to be. So I think things like that can be very, very fascinating to look. The child on the side, what are they doing? What are they about? This little chap, I think, was partly using the first-hand experience. It was at moments very foundational, the play. Sometimes he would even sort of halt what he was doing and move into really looking at the equipment that was on offer, the resources that were there, and sort of you could see him stop and think, oh, I better explore this bit. How does that work? So that's important, because we see him going from the literal use of his play. Now, what I know about this little boy, because the staff at Guildford have told us about this, his dad is a drummer. And so of course, he knows all about drumming. And he's got all the movements. It's a wonderful piece of literal play. And he can do that 1, 2, 3, 4. And then he does a little jump with the music. So we're seeing fantastic bit of literal play. This child is using foundational play, and he's able to imitate. So we've got that imitative kind of play, and we've got the literal play where he's able to use that expertise that he has developed. But I think we're also beginning to see little bits of the deepening of the imaginative play, because I think that we're seeing some music composition here in the play, where he's actually arranging his own music motifs. It's fleeting, but it's there. And this is what happens when children play. He's using, actually, in my view, all 4 of the layers of play at different moments. Absolutely lovely. So that's that.
Yes.
Now,
so just to add to that, the one thing I want to say to our lovely audience here is that small little clip of it's so rich and so full, and we've looked at it many, many times, and every time I watch it, I see something else that fascinates me, or I brought another lens to it. I'd see something else. Well, what did he learn from that? What was the transformation that happened during that? How did the context, how did he relate to that? But if you had that as a focus for children you really know, and Tina said she needed to really understand what was going on, that she as an educator would need to know that little boy's dad was a jazz musician, a drummer, and you'd know the children, and you can bring that deep knowledge of the children into your own practice and your own tutors. And the other thing I think was fascinating there was where was the educator? She was there because she was filming, and that little boy there was the odd moment, he was so immersed, but he did turn around and look and just check out, am I okay? That emotional referencing back, and she giving him permission to carry on with that. So that educator was quite skillful in her being a play companion, but not intervening, letting it unfold, I think. So loads there, I hope that you could see, but if you did it with some of your own practice, it would have even deeper resonance for you. Okay, on to the next, Tina.
Lovely. So let's just have a little think when we look at this piece, this little episode of play. This is Rapunzel and the blocks. And again, look out for the layers, look out for the first-hand experiences, the emotion, thoughtful feelings again, the adult role, how is the adult observing, supporting, extending, and how are the children being given that time, space across the different lenses to really wallow in their play? And can you begin to see some transformative outcomes coming into the play here? So here we go. Thank you very much.
What did you say?
This is Rapunzel's
Is that Rapunzel's?
hairs.
Is that her hair? Rapunzel's hair, and it's going all the way down. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. We need to find that book. We've got to go and look for it, haven't we? I love. And where's the witch? Have you got the witch? Oh. That one's Rapunzel and that one's the witch. Who's that? The prince. Is that the prince who comes to rescue her?
Lovely. Well, just a few reflections on that lovely little piece of play. Very much a foundational piece of play. The foundation here is the wonderful, rich experience of the story of Rapunzel, which clearly this little girl is very emotionally engaged with. And what's so lovely here is the adult. We can see the freedom but with the guidance here, where the adult is just supporting her in taking that foundational play. The imitative kind of play has been there because she's sort of taken the characters in the story, and this is what the research shows us children do when they're involved in the kind of story aspects of play. They tend to go for the characters first. They go for the people first, which I think is a lovely human thing to do, and the actual nitty-gritty of the story they tend to piece together a little bit later on. So if you want children to be good at creative writing later on, this kind of play is absolute magic, because they're getting the characters and the adult is just helping her a little bit with the story, reminding her the hair, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair, reminding her of some of the bits in the story. So also giving her the language, because this little girl, English is not her first language. So she's helping her with that so that she will be able to act out the story literally for herself as she begins to acquire that. But she's able to do it in movement with the props, and she's made the props. So we are seeing a deepening of the imaginative play, even here, even though it's very foundational, very emergent, very much developing the literal, but we are seeing some deepening play because she knows each of those little characters and she's got them all sorted the way she wants, and she's arranging that for herself. So a little bit of creativity is coming in here with the way that she portrays the different characters in the blocks, and the way that she's built the tower that Rapunzel is in with the witch. So again, we're looking across the range of the different layers of play and how different things are coming in different ways at different times. Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of the session, and I've enjoyed looking at these videos and reflecting on them again, and you know, the drumming boy and the Rapunzel girl with how she'd created the hair tumbling down, I thought was amazing and creative too. But as you could say, you know, what else could you do? Same bit of it. We could have a deep conversation about the resources, the space, the place, where it happened, what time of year it was, how time was done, who was in there, and what those children were gaining, the transformation from those. So we're going to be encouraging you as we close to kind of use these lenses and this reflective framework to start to reflect on the quality of your own play provision and what you see happening in that, and trying to really identify and support the joyful and deep learning processes and extend and deepen them as well. You've got a link there. The Reflection with Guidance tool that we've developed through this project is free for you to download and use with your own your own reflections and your team's reflections. So download that. It's there. It's a great tool for you to use in team meetings, I hope, where somebody could bring a bit of observation. You can do it with photographs. You could analyze photographs using it. You could analyze an educator's story and narrative about what they saw and what they were happening. So, you know, I hope this is, I said at the beginning, I hope this is the beginning of a deepening reflective dialogue, and that you've got quite excited about really bringing play back into the central space in your provision. And I'm just going to do an unashamed bit of product placement, if you like. But we've written up all this work in a book which is coming out in the new year, called Being and Becoming a Froebelian Community of Practice. I think it is available for you to pre-order now, Sue, you told me. But it's there. If you want to find out more about this work, it's there. But there is a really short and easy guidance, practical guidance that you can download for free off that website site there. And I'm just going to finish with one final thought, which is the next slide, Sue. And I think it's really important that for the children and for us who work with the children, it's a kind of difficult, grim time at the moment. Many of our children are really living through very challenging circumstances. And in our provision, we're, you know, I talk to many, and there's a lot of tiredness of people out there, and that drain that working with children. But it's really important that we don't lose sight of what those children's, what our mission is, and why we're there, and why we come in to work with that. And as educators, I think it's important that we have energy. And I always talk about, are you a Tigger or are you an Eeyore? You know, in the you know, Tiggers are full of energy and bounce. Think of the drummer, you know, and it's really important that we don't let ourselves be done to, or let the children, but we let the children, they're our future, and we've got to let them dream and to have a hope that they can grow up into a really positive world. And one of the biggest things that you can give those children is the pleasure and the power of play. It will secure their emotional well-being. It will enable them to work through the challenges and the difficulties. And I think as a staff team, I hope in your staff dialogues you're a bit playful with each other as well. You know, I think it's really important that we as adults don't lose the pleasure and the power of play, that we play with children and with each other, because our work with young children needs that energy and needs a team that feel the power of their ability to provide guidance to those children and to frame those children, give them the opportunities that they need. So I try to say to people, don't be an Eeyore, you know, let's not moan, let's kind of be upbeat and optimistic. And I always say, we have the daily privilege, you have the daily privilege of being with these young children and seeing what they can do and what they can show you. And they teach us as well as us teaching them, I think. So continue to hope and dream. Here's Pedagogy of Hope. We can't even think about that if we don't have that hope and dream ourselves. So hold on to that, enjoy those children, play a bit more and take pleasure in that, and just enjoy the company of each other and those children on a daily basis. Thank you all for coming along tonight. It's been a great privilege to have this time with you. Thank
Chris
you.
and Tina, I don't know how to thank you. That has been absolutely inspirational. I'm lucky that I can thank you here, and I'm sure there's some messages going in the chat that people have found that absolutely fascinating. I think you two are definitely very Tiggerish, and I'm hoping that we've got a lot of Tiggers in our audience tonight. I've written down 3 little things that just come into my mind here to just remind me. One of them is your lovely phrase, Tina, about the idea of being playful and thinking about that. The idea of respecting children's play. and looking at play as play, and somebody put in the chat, not thinking about, you know, oh, are they counting, are they doing this, but actually looking at the play themselves, and also the fact that there are some tools to help us as practitioners to reflect on what we see and what we observe. And I'm sure everybody else has got lots of other things that have come out of it for them. But can I thank both of you? We're really appreciative that you've given up your time tonight to come and talk to us at the networks. And I do hope that I'm going to ask our lovely audience to do one more thing. They know this is going to come, but please, 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 in time-honoured fashion, just as you did with your little sign-in, we do need your feedback. If we're going to be able to offer these sorts of sessions to other practitioners or more to you, we need to know, you know, that what you've got from it, how it's going to influence you as a person, what you personally feel, and also how it will help you in your practice. So please just spare us 2 or 3 minutes just to complete this form now, either by clicking on the link or by scanning it.